This video is the second part of my TCI Mustang suspension install. You'll see me prep and paint the engine compartment, and then I'll walk you through some of the process that I use to get the rust off of parts and get things into powder coat. And I fully get it, grinding and sanding isn't the most interesting thing to watch, so I keep it moving by doing a lot of time lapse. With everything ground clean, I can come back and put a profile on this metal. That way the paint will stick. And what I use for that is some sandpaper and a DA sander. I could have used a single stage paint here, but to play it safe I went ahead and used two-part epoxy. This is some stuff I got from Eastwood. It's just their Eastwood gray, and I really like the way this looks. This product for the base coat is made by a company called Tamco. It's their jet black, and it does a great job of covering, and I was real impressed with this as well. To stop this from being so shiny, I decided to go with a matte clear. Again, this was Tamco, and it covered really uniform, and the end product turned out really neat. I'm super happy. I may actually spray the outside of the car with this same black. Keeping things moving, so these are the control arms and all of the components for the front. Before I can sandblast or acid dip this stuff, all of the bushings, the polyurethane parts, the shafts, everything has to come out. Some of this I had to get creative. A lot of this is a learning process for me. I've never stripped parts like this. Trying to get the torque that I needed to separate the control arms was tricky without bending the control arms, but in the end it worked out. So almost everything's going to get powder coated with the exception of these spindles. To stop from having to tear everything down, I went ahead and separated it just enough to get some plastic in there. I'm going to clean these up and use primer and caliper paint. But while I was getting this prepped, I noticed the steering arms didn't sit quite right. I didn't like the way that the casting was. So what I'm going to do is clean it up a little bit with the milling machine just to give it the clearance it needs so that everything sits flush and tight and where it belongs. It really didn't take much. With just a little bit off the top, it worked out perfect. This is all it needed. Now, a lot of these parts have sat for a while and they've got some rust on them. Most of the time I blast parts, but for some of the smaller stuff, just to get in all the nooks and crannies, I have this bucket of muriatic acid I use. The mix is 1:1, so 1 part acid, 1 part water. And after about an hour, they come out looking really nice. And you'll see it here with a little wipe, all of the residue comes off. Now, anytime you put any parts that are metal in acid, you have to do something to neutralize them. If you don't, it'll bleed through your paint or your powder coat later. Some people use baking soda. What I prefer to use is just some coolant mix that I've got for my CNC table. This stuff's a really alkalotic mix. It's like 9.5, 9.8 on the pH scale, and it just neutralizes any of the remaining acids so that nothing bleeds through. So let me give you a tour of my oven. I built this a few years back. All it is a big box that's framed out that has some rock wool insulation in it. I can run this thing up to 450 or 500 degrees, but I never run it past 400 really. The box that I built that controls it, it's pretty simple. So basically, it's got a PID, just like you'd find on a grill, that's hooked to a thermocoupler, which is just a temp gauge on the inside, and it sends signal of when to turn the elements on and turn them off. I have some breakers that are matched to the size of the power it needs for those elements, and a couple of solid state relays that control the signal with a big heat sink. So This thing has fancy alarms on it. It'll do ramp up, ramp down, heat sink for different times. On the inside, I've got a small wall oven in here right now. My wife is so jealous. She's been wanting one of these forever in the house. I found that online. It was cheap on Marketplace, and I just use that for smaller parts. Obviously, that's going to come out. It's just stored in here, so it's out of the way. And the parts will go in there. There's my heating elements and a fan to circulate some air. And the parts will just hang from the top here. So if you're not familiar with powder coating, the way this works, you electrically charge through basically static your part, and it draws a powder to it. That powder goes on dry, and then you bake it, and when it bakes, it melts and coats it. It's much stronger than paint, it's more durable than paint, and it just, sometimes I think it looks nicer. It gets in all the nooks and crannies. For this project, I'm gonna use some Heavy Zinc Primer. That's gonna give me insurance for this coastal region since there's salt water around here. And then for color, I'll probably use the Kilo Gray. This is a pretty cool color. It's kind of like the anthracite wheels. It's a dark gray, but it has a little bit of a metallic look to it. It'll give it some class without making it super in your face like some of these other colors would be. All right, so I got my first batch of parts hanging up inside the oven, and what I've done is I've just outgassed them. And what this does is it lets all of the imperfections and the oils that may be trapped inside of these parts come out. They've been baking for about 30 minutes. I'll pull these out, let them cool down, and I can start shooting them. My audio for this part was kind of rough because the fan was loud in the booth. I'll just walk you through some of the equipment that I use when I'm powder coating. So this unit is a Hyper Smooth O2 LED. It's a machine made by Columbia Coatings, and I've been real happy with it. It was a huge upgrade from my Eastwood that I was using before it. Now there's a couple of settings on it. I can adjust the KV and the air pressure. Typically, with the KVs, I set them at 80 for my first coat, and then second and third coats, I've had the most success around 50. And I don't know if that's what they recommend, but I found that works really well for me for coverage and not getting back ionization. Now the biggest benefit to me of powder coating is it's very forgiving, and if you mess up, you can just blow it off and try it again. Sometimes the powder gets where you don't want it, and you can just use your finger to remove those areas. And if you need to, you can also blow it off with some air. You're not doing that with paint. With paint, you're masking things off, and if you mess up, you've got to sand it and try it again. The other big issue with paint is there's a cure time, and with this stuff, as soon as it comes out of the oven and cools down, you can put it right into service. It's as hard as it's going to get. Now I'm shooting the Kilo Gray right here, and you can see it pulls to the part really nice. Typically 1 or 2 coats, and I get really good coverage, a lot more uniform coverage and more penetration into those tight spots than with paint. The other big benefit is you don't have to risk runs. Now you can get it to run if you put it on real hard, but it's not like paint. You know before you bake it if you're in that situation. Let me show you where I'm at here. It just came out of the oven. It's still 400 degrees. And these ones are about to go in the oven. Here's the raw powder. What you got going on over here? You get it fixed? So I've taken these parts down a couple of times and put them back together, and this last time I realized that I forgot to put grease in between each of the bushings. Now the kit came with a little bit inside of it, and when I got to the bottom of the energy suspension container, it showed some grease there. I was using an extension to drive these out, but I figured if I'm gonna be taking things in and out, and I'll probably do it more over the years, I went ahead and turned a tool on the lathe. I don't know if you can see it very good in the video, but basically it's just something I can drop in there and smack with the hammer, and it'll drive it until it's almost all the way out. And I'll just show you on one here. It makes my life a little easier. Now once I'm at the end, which this one's got some junk on it, looks like it started to rust in there, I can pull the tool out and I should be able to remove it by hand from there. These are so stuck just from oxidation and whatnot, it's probably worth it that I'm pulling all these out and getting some grease in behind them. That's it. Now you're probably wondering what I'm doing with this strap right here. The control arm wouldn't fit on that cross member, and I didn't want to remove material. I don't know if it's from when I disassembled and reassembled it. Maybe I bent that lower control arm a little bit. I don't think I did. I believe what's happening here is the clearances were just too tight, probably when it got welded and manufactured. So I just grabbed a spot off the frame, brought the strap over to the control arm, and wrapped it with a wrench, and it was perfect. I was able to get the shims in that I needed, and then it dropped right where it needed to be. Okay, next we got the rack. So before I can install this, what I need to do is I need to find center. And how I'm going to do that is I'll run this all the way to one side so I can rotate this until it stops, and then I'll rotate it the other way and count the rotations. and however many rotations I have, I'll divide that by 2, bring it back, and that'll put me dead center. It's a real simple way to do it. Once I'm center, then I can put this in the car and get all of my adjustments from there. That way I know that I'm starting with full travel from this rack. To save myself from future headache later in life, I tried to use anti-seize anytime I could with the final installation on all these parts. And once the rack was in, I could mount the sway bar. These are just some polyurethane mounts that come up on it, and then there's bolts that come through and lock it in place. And what you're seeing here are some Heim joints, and these just connect that sway bar on their ends to the bottom of the lower control arm. Another late night of it, but it was worth it. I've still got to do some little adjustments yet to straighten out the tie rods and do my toe in. I'll pull the calipers off for that, but for now I'm pretty excited about this. You saw we got both spindles in, control arms are in, the sway bar is mounted. It's starting to look like a suspension now. Everything's snugged up. All right, so the last piece of the puzzle for this suspension in the front here are going to be these inner fenders. Now the ones that come with this kit that I bought, the holes line up pretty close. If I move it so the holes are just right, my reveal's kind of funny on the cross member. So I'm going to find the middle ground on it. You can see I've got some interference here. I'll trim up what I need to by marking it from the backside. But the design in general on them is pretty bare bones. I really like the Detroit Speeds, how they step out, and I think I'm gonna do something similar. So my solution for that is gonna be the bead roller. I've already got it on the bench over here. I've been playing around with some different dies. I've got a 16th step, 1/8 inch step, but to get the profile I want, I'm gonna use a 1/4 inch step with a big split. And what that does, and you can see on a sample piece here, it kind of gives it a raised roll, but it also does it on an angle, so it's not as pronounced all at once. These do dig in a little bit, so I'll have to play around some with some tape and dimensions, but I'll do a time lapse and show you as I build this out.
I helped bead roll these metal plate things. It really fancies it up inside, supposedly.
Now I've got some cleaning up to do yet. I'm gonna put them in the blaster and put a profile on it, and these will get the same black and then matte clear to match the rest of the inner fenders. With a couple coats of black paint, these turned out really nice. I've got to bolt them in still, but this is probably a good spot to end this video. The front suspension's all wrapped up, and I couldn't be happier with the way it turned out.